Okay, welcome back. If you saw the first part, if you didn't, then this is the part where we take this flight factor, Boeing 777-200ER, Alpha build 2.0.10, out from Honolulu, where we are, over to Romeo Juliet Tango Tango. Let me throw the essential flight plan up on the screen here. And you get the gist of how far we're going, crossing most of the Pacific here, and this is the alpha version of the airplane. There is a lot of built-in features, but there is a lot still coming on the way. If you want to see the detail of the EFB and a lot of the other features, you can check out the first video. If not, this is just the part 2, and you'll see quite a great bit of detail. Some of the FMS programming I've left out of this video for the specific reason of I just want to save the time for yourselves in this video. Obviously, this is a well over 3,000 mile flight. We have more than plenty of capability with this aircraft, which can fly 8,000 miles, essentially well over 7,000 nautical miles for the 200ER version of the 777. We've got plenty of fuel, everybody's loaded up, all the doors are closed, everything, all the ground support equipment is gone. Essentially, let's hop on board. Thanks for joining me today. Okay, also, one quick thing before we head out, now this is all set up. Yes, I cleared up the codes, engine shutdown. I think that it's not happy with maybe the long rotation of the engine on startup. Not sure, but I've cleared everything else up and we are doing doors manually today. There's also on this side a event recorder, which is really cool. It shows all kinds of information, inputs of just about every system in here. Electrical shows all types, AC, volts, frequency, kilovolt amps, all kinds of neat stuff in here. So there's even trend monitoring, apparently. Can clear all of that if you want. It's really neat to be able to actually see that. We'll just leave that up on the screen. Maybe we can mess with that later. So that should work. It says no V-speeds on our indicated airspeed, but as I am not a guru in the department of 777 flight, I'm just going to get my V1 of my rotate speeds here, 130 and 137. So there you go. Takeoff data request is grayed out, assuming that will come at a later point. So for now, I'm just going to leave that page up there as a friendly reminder. And then let's hear some throttle application on this plane before we indeed head out. That sounds incredible. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and listen to that inside, and then we'll quick cut to the active runway. Wow, that sounds amazing. Okay, see you at the active. Okay, and welcome back. We are back taxiing on the taxiway here to 4 right, which is just out of our front right-hand windscreen there. And there's a couple really cool things about this. The RAAS system. It's basically an alert system that auditorially lets the pilots know that they are coming to intersections on runways and when they are actually on active runways. In the meantime, let's go ahead and throw on some of these lights here on the overhead, and we'll go ahead and at this time activate our landing lights as well as our strobes. And in the meantime, I've gone ahead and cleared up all of our ICAST messages. We've got our speeds on our flight displays here for our V1 and our rotate. I've gone ahead and made sure all of our nav radios were on and functioning, as well as programming in the transponder to 7000 Unicom. We're not using, obviously, the ATC today. However, it should be noted that as this is an early access product, there is essentially, I believe, no VNAV at the point in time of making this video. So that's just something to be aware of. The route that I programmed in, I've modified a little bit and actually put in some of my own custom parameters there for speeds and altitude references so that we can hopefully make a successful approach into Tokyo Haneda Airport. If the VNAV does not work, we'll just play it by ear. However, please, be aware that this product review today is an early access review, so that's why I like to do these longer flights with these long-haul aircraft, because essentially stability is a big thing when you're flying that far in terms of coding and how long the game will run stably for. So I like to do the long hauls just to check the stability. So crossing
4 right.
There you go. It lets you know that you are approaching it. And I'm going to maintain runway heading as best as possible when pulling off out of here.
On runway 4 right.
And there we are. Lets us know we are where we need to be. Everything appears to be aligned and perfect. Ready for us to go. Maintain no faster than 250 knots indicated until 10,000 feet. That being said, final checks. Everything's on. No disaster lights illuminated. AP was off. And we are ready to get out of here. So let's check this out. This will be the first time that I take this aircraft off. And I'm going to go with a essentially D-rated takeoff. I'm in the minus 20 and the climb 2 performance factor. We're fairly light as we're only flying, over 3,000 nautical miles on an aircraft that can fly over 7,000 nautical miles. There's more than enough time here for flying appropriately. A little bit of drift off to the right there. That's okay. Positive rate. Gear up. And it sounds really nice. And just manually flying this to feel what it feels like here. Here's speed low. We'll give it a little bit more power to hear some more of the engine and not stall out over the city. That'd be nice. And it has a very, I would say, a very weighted feeling to it, for sure. There's essentially the feeling of you can't really climb at super exaggerated rates here based off of the weight factors. I mean, I think we're basically at 500,000 pounds here with our fuel load. So, 500,000. It's a lot of weight. Roughly, I think, 200 passengers in accordance with the flight plan. So yeah, there's a bit of load on the aircraft, to say the least. Just bringing the flight director bars back towards the center here. Essentially trying to fly that runway heading as best as possible. Let's see if we could do that. Autopilot is on. And auto throttle is maintaining 250. And once we get to 10,000 feet, I'll go ahead and change that VNAV speed a little bit there. Well, rather the vertical speed manual direct to 10,000. We'll hold 10,000, and then I will zoom in here and show you we're going to head to Lilia at flight level 380, 38,000 feet. Everything seems to be cool here. And again, there's a checklist down here. There are checklists for all kinds of things here. Oh, I never have seen that before. Check that out. It shows where your throttles were and where they are being maintained by the auto throttle. That's cool. I've never seen that translucent effect before. That's pretty neat. So there's that, and then yes, we're just maintaining. Let's go outside and check out some of these sounds and visuals. Out of 7,800 feet for 10. And while we're at it, I'm going to go ahead and see what happens if I hit LNAV here. Heading hold is on. And I would like to attempt to turn towards where we need to go. 284 degrees, however. Try to adjust this. Track hold and LNAV. So to change that, obviously I am not a 777 captain, but it is, I think, attempting to make some adjustments here. We'll see where it's going. And just for argument's sake, I'll plug in 284 so that we don't get too far off our track as I'm trying to head towards, obviously, Lilia. Approaching 10,000 feet. And then I'm just going to go straight up to 38,000. So we'll plug that in. Change. No more speed restraints. Of course, we have to remember at 18,000 to change over to standard 29.92. So 221 nautical miles to waypoint Lilia, and it's letting us know that we're not on an intercept heading. However, we will. This is just to experience the takeoff roll on this aircraft before I hone in on this. We know where we need to go, 284 degrees direct. We could technically fly in heading mode all the way as there's no VNAV. There really wouldn't be much of a difference between following a heading, right, and then having to step climb or step descend down by waypoints. Let me show you what I'm saying here. So we're going to 38,000 feet. We have 217 nautical miles to do it. And then we're going to go up to 40,000, so not much of a difference, but the rest of the flight is maintained essentially at 40,000 feet. There's almost 2,700 nautical miles there. Then we start getting into the lower numbers. And you can see we are going to step down to 38, to 36, to flight level 325, 32,500 feet, so on and so forth. And then Godin L is our star, standard arrival. And then from there it should take over. But the numbers, I wasn't liking what I was seeing here because there is no VNAV program, but there also was no import for SimBrief, as far as I'm aware, to be able to program in company routes with all of the data from SimBrief into the FMS that you see here. So I have no doubt that will absolutely be coming, unless I am missing something. I could not find it. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything negative. It's on its way, no doubt. And we can essentially fly this ourselves. So, weather seems to be good. We are no longer at the airport. Could probably change that whenever we wanted. We are on the northern side of the island. And they've closed our windows on us. Rude flight attendants. One thing I will say is I do like the sounds that this aircraft comes with. The GE90 is absolutely one of those aircraft that have very unique sounds to them, and I like the throttle response here. I like how you can essentially shove the throttles to the firewall on the takeoff roll or any other phase in the flight, and the engines don't respond immediately. That is something that I think is really nice to see. It flies like a lot of composite blade material and metals, and you know, the weight and the inertia of the rotating engines really has a feel to it that makes the engine not instantaneously responsive, because as you no doubt have seen, 777 engines, the GE90s and any other variant that this aircraft comes with, have incredibly large diameter high bypass blades on the front. So the fact that they are not instantaneous in reaction to throttle input is a really nice thing to see, for sure. So we are well on our way to 38,000 feet, and I am flying heading mode towards Lilia. And with that being said, once I get to 38,000 feet, I'll go ahead and just update you with some avionics, and probably coming closer with just some updates, you know, in terms of the range. Not really going to be too much going on for 2,700 nautical miles. So I want to fly the whole route. I want to land for real in Tokyo, and essentially that is to test the range of the aircraft and to test the stability. We've got 141,000.2 pounds, so 141,000 pounds of fuel in weight, of course, and we're running center tanks as well as left and right, so we should have plenty of gas to make the trip. No problems on the ICAS. Everything looks good there. I'll go ahead and throw on the auto brake now before I forget later on, and maybe a little bit later in the flight we'll monkey around with the checklist and I can go in there. So that being said, as we fly through the clouds, see you at 38,000 feet. Okay, so just a couple of things. Obviously, we're at 38,000 feet here. And just approached a waypoint there, so we are turning on to our next. I'll explain that in just a second. Okay, so what's going on here is, although in the FMS I have the speeds here, 461, so on and so forth, pretty much 480 across the board at flight level 400. I'm going and using the Mach number here, 0.84, right? 84% the speed of sound. So I've got that plugged into the auto throttle and it's maintaining that. So that is indeed how I am flying the airplane. Difference between heading and track is heading is where you are calling the plane to go, but track is the actual route the plane is taking in a straight line in our particular case, right? So I had track hold mode on, and then I just drew a line with our heading bug here, track mode as well, straight into the magenta path. It intercepted, and now we are on, as you can see, speed, LNAV, and altitude for 38,000 with auto throttle engaged at Mach 0.84. So everything's flying great. It's working. Now the problem is 2,686 nautical miles. So we have a ways to go. I have a ways to go. I won't do the entire thing. Of course not. That would take too long. But I am going to actually do it in real life time because I want, I want the simulation to run for that much time. So that's essentially something that I think should be done. It essentially gives the ability to let any bugs develop, computer memory usage, so on and so forth. But we are at 38,000, as you can see, and everything's going good. I hope you like the simulated screens here, as well as the maintenance log recorder center there. There is a lot of stuff here. We essentially there just ran out as we had the ICAS message for our center fuel tanks. We are in fact at 0.0 for quantity. No gallons, no pounds, no nothing. We're empty. But we've got our left mains and our right mains, right? There's 68.3 and 64 in the right. So more than enough. We've got our cross feeds open. Everything's supplying. So you got a left and a right wing tank, right? Or multiple tanks. And I'm just leaving the cross feeds open essentially for any, you never know. If you have a fuel leak or flame outs or anything like that, I just like to give these engines the opportunity to guzzle fuel from as many sources as possible, especially now that our center is not fueling both the left and the right engines because we have no fuel in that pump. So there you go. Clear the ICAS up with that, or excuse me, the EFIS, yellow amber messages, and we are on our path. As there is no VNAV, it should be interesting to try to fly this later on closer towards the descent. After approximately 2,600 plus miles, I will bring you back and we'll get the approach ready for the navigation radio frequencies into Tokyo Haneda. So hopefully the weather's okay there. Without the VNAV, I don't know if the ILS is implemented in terms of, glide slow path and all of that. But we do have flight directors, we do have heads-up displays, rather, our primary flight instruments, and as long as we've got 2 working engines, I think we can manage to pull something together for a final approach and touchdown. I'm excited to see how the weight on the wheels feels with the landing, and it should be quite a bit lighter than it is now, and a bit more power to weight ratio, obviously, with less fuel. 2,700 nautical miles from now. So that's the story. I will catch back up with you when we are closer to descent. Appreciate you joining the channel today. small interjection here. I'd like to throw up the Navigraph on the page. We are a little bit north of our magenta line. That is because I'm going direct from one waypoint all the way to Seals. So effectively, that's because I have not programmed in the latitude and longitude for our track here out to Tokyo, Haneda. That being said, these are some of our statistics here. And most importantly, our destination, nautical mileage to distance there. Estimated time of arrival, 5:52 Zulu. 4 hours and 34 minutes left in the flight. So we are definitely making our way, slowly but surely. Because if Mach 0.84 is slow, but this portion of the route's going to take a little bit of time too, because when we re-intercept here at Seals, we'll continue our LNAV route. And then we essentially are going to wind up obviously here, but we have to transition right after Eskin to the Godin star, basically, right? So we're going to do the standard arrival, and then once we hit Sandy, we'll do the ILS approach to 16. So everything, again, is going according to plan. Top of descent, somewhere's right around in the Nogix or Akrit area, maybe a little bit before that. I'd have to look at the flight plan, but everything is going well. And we are currently quite a ways out. I wouldn't want to have to swim that distance back to Honolulu. So, smooth sailing from here. And welcome to the standby jump seat, or one of two here. I have indeed been hogging all the coffee in the bag here with our throwaway bag. So it's keeping me awake for this long flight, but I wanted to do one last update before we accelerate ahead and quick cut to the descent phase of flight, and just bring about a little bit more accuracy to the plan. So because there's no VNAV, you can see the waypoint Millet and you can see Rusta. Top of descent is essentially in between those, and we're going to start heading down to approximately 38,200 feet at Rusta. Now I say approximately because what I'd like to do is also bring this up here, and what I've gone ahead, now we're working backwards, so if this is 16 left, this is the approach with the Sandy transition, and the star is on there, but what I did was essentially from Godin back, I reprogrammed some of the speeds and some of the altitudes so that they were more realistic without being able to import the actual VNAV path and performance data for speeds on the way. Of course, there's one other thing we have to do before we get there. When we get closer, we'll have to recalculate for our speeds on our VREF for the display up here so that we can stay on track with that. I am going to attempt a ILS landing, obviously for 16 left. You saw in the other part of the supercut there, without the speaking, the NavRad page, right? So it gives us what we need, and we can just swap over essentially to our plan over here when we go to land, so to speak, right? So that being said, I wanted to bring up for you all out there the Navigraph charts, right? So if I zoom out here, you can see us there on the right-hand screen. That's us. We are approaching Seals. That is our next waypoint here. And I've also gone ahead and brought up the weather radar here because I was just looking at our destination, Tokyo, Romeo Juliet, Tango Tango, and I'm not seeing anything on the radar for cloud coverage or turbulence or anything like that. So if you go ahead and you play through the scale, it essentially says we're going to be free and clear. I'm still going to try the ILS anyways, but just in the event of an emergency, I'll be able to make a VFR approach. So as long as we can follow the flight plan per se in most of the detail, it should hopefully be pretty accurate. I'm not expecting any problems or go-arounds on the VFR, but you never know, as this aircraft does have potential failures. So that's something to keep in mind. Of course, if we go down and we change from an hour and 19 minutes to our time of arrival, we essentially have about 570 nautical miles to go. So you can kind of see we are working our way there, and everything is indeed going to plan. Just a quick update, I had originally said moments ago that this would be, no gigs and lid would be around where the top of descent is. It's actually in this area here. So we're going to have to come down from essentially 38,000 feet all the way in for our sandy transition. 16 left. So that's what you've got. That's what we've got. Everything's going okay. Once we're on our descent, probably quite a ways through the descent, I'll bring it back. Maybe, obviously before the star and the approach. So, thanks for joining me again at AOK Games. Okay, so as we've obviously started our descent just a little bit ago, I wanted to throw up this map here. I think it illustrates the 3,500 nautical miles that we've done. Now, just a couple quick disclaimers. Let's just look at this real quick. And we are definitely closing in on home base here. So, we have theoretically 12 minutes to destination. We're looking at 80 nautical miles. However, we are traveling very fast, so we will soon slow down. That ETE will inevitably change for sure. So the other thing I wanted to point out as well is if you look at the trip timer there for the clock, it only says 440, so 4 hours and 40 minutes. It was actually a lot longer than that, obviously closer to 7.5. The fuel is a little higher than it should be, and the reason for that is I've gone ahead and done time acceleration numerous amounts of times, probably about maybe 100 to 150 nautical miles worth of range, just to go in and out of simulation variation. I just wanted to make it variable to see, what would happen with the aircraft as far as the stability was concerned in terms of changing the time rates. And gotta be honest with you, zero issues whatsoever so far with this aircraft. So that's good news. Again, basically we're descending here. I'm falling a little bit behind in that explanation, but we're supposed to be heading on down to 32,500. I have no doubt when you hit the flight level change button, this aircraft likes to go down pretty quickly. That's why on the last one I basically did just VS down so that I could control the rate a little bit more, not to make, 200 passengers queasy. But it does function. It does function in terms, at the moment and the time of recording this video, you can step down and descend, obviously, through flight level change, as long as you are keeping up with your FMS track here, vertically and with speed. So that's always a good thing. I'm probably going to, obviously, you know, as this isn't imported from SimBrief and it was all manually entered by me, I'm not really going to fly these numbers other than the altitudes because the speeds are sort of irrelevant. We just need to make sure that we're under, you know, this red line here because we don't want to overspeed the aircraft, as well as we want to be under 250 indicated when we're below 10,000 feet. So that being said, once I'm actually in the probably later stages, I guess, of the star and the approach, I'll just quick cut to that so that you don't have to descend out of 30,000 with me and take all that extra time. But it's flying. I'm not touching a thing. It is flying the LNAV, lateral navigation path. No problems whatsoever. So that's always a good sign. See you in a second. Okay, so really closing in now. You can see top center. We are the magenta arrow, right? Heading towards Namco. We are on the star, and our transition, if you follow it through, all the way to the green line, sandy, left-hand turn, transition to ILS approach. Essentially what we'll have to do is make sure that, as we're already at 8,000, I've gone ahead and adjusted our pressure here, our altitude parameter. We're going to maintain 8,000 for this last handful of miles. Then we're going to go to snare at 6,000. From there, we need to make sure that we are definitely at 4,000 by Laban. And then Lori is the beginning of the ILS glide slope approach plate. So that's very important to be there. If we look overhead, I've already gone ahead and turned on the landing lights, and we are essentially all set here. So when I get down to 6,000 at Laban, when I get to 6,000 at snare, I'll bring us back. Okay, so according to our standard arrival, they want us to be at 6,000 feet. We are currently at 6,000 feet, as well as there was a speed constraint of 210 knots. So that's off of the route now, as we're on one of 3 active legs on our FMS page here, but it wanted us at 210. So we are essentially flying obviously towards the lower end of our flight envelope, but auto throttle worked its magic, and we are absolutely basically towards the final legs. If I bring up that, you can see just a few more waypoints, right? We've got snare and then T6L60 to sandy transition, and then we need to make sure that we're at 4,000 for Laban. That way we can slide into the localizer approach there. Okay, so essentially what I've gone ahead and done is turn that right-hand corner right after snare, and I'm showing you here pretty much the rest of our track. It's going to be that gradual left hand into that hard left hook, and then we're just going to fly straight in Lori Lycos. So I'll just do that in real time with you here. I'm going to go ahead, since we are our next waypoint that we need to be at 4,000 is coming up within a couple miles. So let's flight level change, and then I'll just do V-speed, 1,000 foot or so a minute. I'm still at 210 knots. I'm going to bring that down because I think it's time to start possibly thinking about bringing the slats and the flaps down, as well as the landing gear. Again, we've only got 3.5, 2, 2, 3. I mean, these are all small change, and they're going to go by real quick here at the end. All that talk I did earlier about not needing to worry about the clouds. Well, it looks like we're going to breeze right through them. It's not raining, lightning, or thundering, so that's all good, right? Everything's still set up. We're on our way down to 4,000. Let's expedite this to 1,500 foot a minute. And then from 4,000, we'll be able to go localizer and then approach. Now, I don't know if those are active in this version of the early release, but we'll certainly find out. So, see if we can get in one notch of flaps here. Bring our lower end of the flight envelope into a little bit more appropriate ranges, so we're not flying near the red with 180 there. See if we can grab 5. And it's bringing the red down. That's okay. We are going to lower to about 180 on the auto throttle. Approaching 4,000 foot, which will line us up with the proper altitude for our approach plate. We've got the localizer, 157 degrees on the course, LNAV, and glide slope. Now, like I said, I'm not sure if they'll work. We will find out. Just throwing a little bit of speed brake here. Starting to round that left corner. Now, throwing another notch. 15. Clear the caution. And then we're starting to get our reference speeds as well. Let's remove the speed brakes. And then see if we can get some gear extensions here. Flying straight through the clouds. After the gear comes down, we will put the nose gear landing lights on. Nose gear. And let's bring our speed back. 150. And let's just check down here real quick. If you're seeing a little bit of lag, apologize. This is running in 4K. So 30 degrees flaps, 127 is our reference speed. So let's get down to 30. Let's go into localizer and approach. Well, actually, we'll just go into localizer then. We'll see if it'll do the approach, right? Let's bring the auto throttles down to about 130. Add the last notch of flaps. And let's see if we capture it. Glide slope in green, magenta coming into magenta. And this needs to be right because we are flying over large populace. Okay, directly ahead, 12 o'clock, we've got the airport. So essentially we are flying almost right at our reference speed. I've given us a couple knots indicated extra energy via our airspeed there, 130. We'll see how we maintain. Now theoretically, we are flying the glide slope in localizer. And we know that, number one, because I'm not touching anything, and it says localizer. We're maintaining our speed, and we also have glide slope. They are in green, and the barometric HPA pressure is theoretically set to what it should be. So let's bring our map here for the nav into the closest thing. We We are essentially pretty much on magenta bar here because we are 0.02 left of center. But at this point, you know, not that we're going to take our eyes off the ball, but we are flying what essentially is an automated glide slope path in. So the approach does seem to work. I don't want to speak too early on that, but hey, this is VFR conditions, right? From here, even if all else fails, we can essentially fly this bird in. We've got our auto brakes set to 3. We are light. So there's 15 in the left tank, 15.2 in the right tank. What's nice about that is this aircraft just flew 3,500 miles in mostly real time, other than the speed increase testing for, you know, software stability. Everything's run 100% perfect. There was literally nothing that went wrong with it, and I am pleased to say that if this is a pre-release in a beta, wow, by all means, once this aircraft has the VNAV, it's insane. And I have to tell you, the legs, I flew the legs manually, of course, right, with the flight level change, everything you need to make this aircraft operate, even if it doesn't do it autonomously on this release, 2.0.10 alpha, doesn't matter. It's stable enough that, in fact, it's actually more engaging because it allows you to take more control of the aircraft and learn the systems, because if it doesn't do it for you, then this is the perfect opportunity to see, hey, how do these things all work? And that was the flight plan, essentially, with the waypoints, obviously, that I pulled off of SimBrief. I have no doubt that, you know, what I essentially did was program this aircraft with that SimBrief data, of course, and it also, from SimBrief, was able to import the suggested fuel load with the 45-minute to 1 hour reserve, and that's the final reserve of 10.8 that I put in the initial part of the FMS programming. So it was accurate, 100% almost accurate, right, with the fuel. If I didn't mess with the simulation rate, it would have gone a whole lot further than 3,500 miles. I wholeheartedly believe this plane in the simulation is absolutely capable of 7,000 nautical miles. Now the only question is, what are you going to do in the meantime if you fly that, right? I mean, you could have a day at the beach, you could rebuild a car engine, whatever it is you do for fun, in the time that it would take to fly this flight. Because I'll tell you, it's taken a while. At least 4 hours and 71 minutes, whatever that is, right, on our clock down there. So that was with a couple 100-mile accelerations there, right, 100, 150, as I previously said. But I mean, look at our 12 o'clock straight out the front window. The airport's in perfect sight. The clouds are beautiful, the water's beautiful, and we're 2 whites over 2 reds. That means we are exactly on glide slope. I haven't touched a single thing. It's doing the throttle by itself. At some point I'll cut this off, obviously, because I want to experience, of course, feeling it, what it's like. So let's go ahead and cut all that off.
Belt sync. Belt sync. Belt sync.
Auto throttle disconnect. And you see the plane was doing fine until the human took over, right? Let's put some speed brakes out,
Sync rate.
because we want to make sure that we
Sync rate.
6.
absolutely do not
Sync
go
rate.
too fast.
Sync rate. Sync rate.
Get back to the
Sync
2
rate.
whites over the reds there.
100,
Very smooth feeling.
40, 30, 20, 10.
And reverse. And off the reversers. And we'll be able to make this exchange here. I have not reserved dinner or a parking spot, so we'll just take whatever comes up. Quite frankly, it's at this point I would consider a massive success. That went extremely well. So that's 100% awesome. Come down here and then clean the flaps up, if I can. That's just me on the mouse. So, while we're here, we don't have to really worry too much about that. Remove the speed brakes as they auto-deploy. With the reversers, we'll stop for a second, right? We'll go to the airport map. We'll turn off our landing lights. And then we can turn on our taxi lights. And then if we look over here, so in real time, I'm going to find a spot. I'll super quick edit to that spot, and then we'll wrap up the video for my final thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed that ILS approach. Okay, I think I've got just the spot for us. Let's rev up that left engine there. Get a little bit of differential thrust in there. Okay, just like that, let's go ahead and throw the parking brake on. Everything's cleaned up with the flaps and the slats, of course. We don't have any other thing we need to turn off other than the taxi and the strobes, right? We'll throw the anti-ice in the off position. We'll just leave the beacon and the nav lights on, and then I'll take the time to start up the APU so that we can listen to the engine spool down, right? Make sure we turn the bleed air off, and then once the APU is up, we'll conclude the video. So everything looks good here. Window heats off, emergency lights off, and then coincidentally the simulation doesn't have to have an end here either, because while we wait for the APU to run up, you still have all of the services that you can do here. All of the carts, all of the stairs and the chalks, the bus, the fuel, the real-time loading, it's all here for the taking, ladies and gentlemen. So that is 100% something that I find quite awesome. I think I hit the start button on that APU. I can never remember. Very good. So, even if you didn't have an operating APU, right, it would essentially be ground power started, right? You could use the ground power unit to power your electronics, and then you could use the huffer machine to air spin your engines up. So now that we've got that, let's go ahead and turn these engines off, because they're probably wondering what we are doing sitting on the ramp. Cool, and then one more to go. which means we can head to the overhead panel one more time, turn the hydraulics off. Let's turn the airs and the electrics off. Let's turn the generators off, as we are obviously running on the APU. We do not need the navigational computers anymore. We'll make sure we turn our packs off, even though we could theoretically obviously turn the APU power, right? Well, we've got the power. What I mean to say is the bleed air for the APU, but we'll just leave that as it is. Essentially, we could open the doors and call the cleanup crew, right? Come out, clean up our mess and that little lab break that we took earlier. That's what it is, ladies and gentlemen. So, Flight Factor, always offering excellent products. Boeing 777-200ER. There is a small disclaimer that I do want to mention. I was able to pick this aircraft up only simply, I do believe, don't quote me, possibly I'm wrong, but this may not be available yet at the recording time of this video and the upload here on YouTube. For I'm not sure how long into the future you would have had to have purchased another Flight Factor aircraft to get the access to this, but don't let that discourage you. It is 100% worth the effort and worth the wait. I believe the video speaks for itself, and I speak for no one except myself. I like the product. I'm just getting in the X-Plane 12, and I absolutely enjoy the Flight Factor aircrafts. The fact that these V2s are so highly studied level, and this is supposedly a beta, or even according to the top right of the screen, an alpha, I find that incredible. Quite frankly, DLC irresistible. So, thanks for joining me here today with this 777. And maybe sometime in the sure future, I'll be able to get the Fearless 747-200 up in the air. That's another one that I want to take a long flight with. So until the next video, everybody take care out there. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.